Hi friends, I hope all is well. I'm still working in the Strathmore sketchbook to see if I can complete it during this daily practice series. I pulled leftover scraps in a limited color palette. This is how I've done this daily practice in the past. It helps me to use up the large amount of leftover scraps that I collect during the year. Also, it challenges me to work with a limited amount of scraps in a limited color palette. I specifically chose this dark blue scrap with a circle cutout and the orange one with the partial cutout. These two papers inspired the design of this collage. The other scraps will be placed partly underneath and besides these two main ones. I'm leaning into a geometric design. Also, I want to use the other scraps as is or with minimal alterations. Since I'm placing some of the elements partly underneath the dark blue and orange elements, I won't be gluing those two until most of the other papers are glued in place. As I'm constantly saying, I'm looking for papers that will add value, color, and size contrast, especially the ones that will be underneath the dark blue and orange elements. Since there isn't much contrast between the dark blue element and the yellow and purple scrap that I just glued into place, I'm choosing this solid light blue scrap to add contrast in this area. By adding a light blue element, the dark blue element is more pronounced. Now this area has all three values represented. Dark blue is the dark blue element. The yellow oxide with purple element has mid and dark values. And the light blue element is the light value. I want to note that it isn't necessary to have all three values represented in all the areas of the collage. This yellow half dome element will have the same effect when glued underneath the dark blue element. All the elements underneath the dark blue element are placed at an angle. This small detail will elevate the design. Now it's time to work on placing the scraps underneath the orange element. I'm using this yellow oxide and purple scrap to add balance to the design. Since another scrap of this paper was used in the lower right area, like the yellow oxide and purple scraps, I'll add other similar scraps in different sizes and shapes in different areas to color balance the design. It's easy to do this type of color balance with a limited color palette and limited amount of scraps. It may seem contradictory to put a solid light blue element next to a white with light blue stripes element. I'm adding it because I need to add color balance to the design with the solid light blue element in the lower right. There wasn't another area I thought it would work. Also, having limited amount of color scraps, these types of decisions need to be made. I trimmed off the papers that were hanging off the edge. I do this step when I need a better view of how the design is developing. I will continue to add elements in different sizes, shapes, and to balance the design. I'll add music at this point and come back for the review of the finished collage. Here's the finished collage. It has a good balance of color, size, and shape of elements. I like how the different layered elements add depth to the design. The grayscale version shows that the different values are balanced around the collage. For example, the large dark blue element in the middle to lower area, the two smaller dark blue elements in the upper right and along the left edge. Let's go on to day 22. On this day, I continued with the similar setup as day 21. I'm working in the Strathmore sketchbook and with a limited color palette. This time it's orange, gray, turquoise, and you can't see it yet, but there are light green papers underneath the gray papers. I'll be using a turquoise transparent paper to cover the collage layer that I'm working on first. This paper was made by monoprinting on deli paper. I'll link the video showing how to make these types of transparent papers in the description box. Throughout the making of this collage, you'll see me place the transparent paper on top of elements to check how the papers look underneath it. I want to make sure there's enough of the paper showing through the unpainted areas along with the painted areas. I wasn't sure the placement of the transparent paper, so you'll see me placing it in different orientations on the collage as I'm working on it. Also, you'll see that I'm not gluing down all the papers as I cut them. Sometimes I need to addition the papers while working on other sections of the collage. Also, I may decide to glue other papers slightly underneath that paper, so it'll be glued afterwards. I'm using a glue stick off camera as the adhesive for this layer. When I glue the transparent paper on top of the collage layer, I'll be using fluid matte medium. I prefer to use fluid medium when gluing transparent paper because it keeps the transparency. Also, I prefer to use matte instead of gloss medium when working in a sketchbook. During these series of daily collage videos, I've used both. I'll add music while you watch me finish this layer, and I'll come back when it's time to glue the transparent paper on top. I chose this placement of the transparent papers because I like the shapes of the unpainted areas. When I glue a large transparent paper, I like to do it in sections. I start at the top to secure the placement of the paper, then work my way downward. This technique helps to make sure the whole paper is secured to the collage layer. Also, it lessens the amount of wrinkles. After reviewing the finished collage, I can see where I'd make changes if I reproduce it. Small dark value elements are needed. Large dark value elements would be too large of a color statement that would take away from the turquoise sections of the transparent papers. Dark value accent elements would be a better choice. It would add depth and complexity to the design. You can see in the grayscale version that it's mostly mid to light value, not much contrast. Another example of how working in a sketchbook is beneficial, you can try out design ideas to see if it works as is or if you need to make adjustments. If I do recreate this collage, I will add those small dark value elements. Let's continue to day 23. I'm building upon the design idea from yesterday's collage. I brought out more transparent papers and leftover scraps in a limited color palette. Actually, it's very limited. Mostly cream, yellow, and orange pattern papers with hints of other colors as well. Unlike yesterday's collage, the transparent papers will be cut into smaller pieces. The collage will have layers but more segmented. Also, these papers are different than day 22 because the painted areas are dark value. Also, I'm still working in the Strathmore sketchbook. The gluing options are the same, glue stick for the non-transparent papers and fluid matte medium for the transparent ones. I'm cutting the two transparent papers close to the actual size that will be used. Both are slightly larger in case the design changes and larger pieces of one or both are needed. I'm starting by cutting sections of the light value papers because the two transparent papers are dark value. I want to have contrasting color elements right from the beginning. There will be mid-tone value elements added later. This is another paper that's made with absorbent ground. I've used similar paper in past daily collage videos. If you haven't watched those videos, it was made by applying a layer of absorbent ground, let it dry, then add acrylic paint on top, either one color or multiple colors. This one has a layer of orange paint, then burgundy paint. This technique gives a beautiful textural pattern. I have a tutorial video on this technique that I'll link in the description box as well. I will add music at this point and come back to discuss the finished collage. This collage is more complex than the one from day 22. There's more color and value contrast. Also, having transparent papers in different sizes and colors adds to it as well. Even with a limited color palette, the design is elevated. The layering is more interesting. For example, the upper right area where the absorbent ground is partially under the green transparent paper and partially uncovered. The grayscale version shows the strong contrast. I like how the shape of the dark value travels up the right side, then along the top. There's mid-tone value underneath it until the dark value absorbent ground element. Also, the value changes in the upper left with the dark value on top of the mid to light value. Then the mid to light value travels down the left side of the collage. Now let's go on to day 24. I'm building upon the last 2 days' collages for this day. This time I brought out more paper options. I won't be using all of them. I just wanted more options because I didn't have a set design plan going into this session. All I knew was that it would be a cool tone color palette with purple, lavender, pink, fuchsia, and navy. You'll see me continuing to check the papers underneath the transparent papers as I collage, making sure there's enough of the painted paper visible. I decided to leave in this section of the video where I'm checking the transparency over different paper options. This step helped me to develop a design plan by deciding on which papers to use. You'll see me continuing to check papers underneath the transparent papers as I collage, making sure there's enough of the painted paper visible. Again, you'll be seeing me use the glue stick for non-transparent papers and fluid matte medium for the transparent ones. This purple washi paper and the pink with purple that's off to the side are more absorbent ground paper. I talk about this paper many times in this series of videos. I encourage you to give it a try. It's similar to monoprinting paper in that you can create a lot of painted paper at one time. It's a fun way to add colorful textural papers to your stash. This pink with purple absorbent ground paper was created with an added step. First, the absorbent ground was applied, then dried. Secondly, the pink paint was applied. After that paint layer dried, I applied purple paint with a gift card. This application adds more unevenness to the paint layer. While the purple paint was wet, I sprayed water on it. The result was this water droplet effect. I'll add music while you watch me finish this layer, and I'll come back when it's time to glue the transparent paper on top. One last check on the placement and size of these two transparent papers before gluing them. I trimmed the fuchsia stripe paper so more of the purple paper underneath it will be exposed. There wasn't enough dark value in the collage, but I didn't want to add too much. I wanted the value contrast to remain unbalanced. Just a small piece of this navy plaid transparent paper was needed. I like the unbalanced dark value elements, but the design needed a few more of the lavender with white pattern paper. This collage design was very busy, but I didn't have any solid papers to add to it. The closest paper that gives a calming effect is this paper. I didn't want to introduce a new paper at this point. Also, by adding these two elements, the design will be more balanced due to where these elements will be placed. Adding the lavender papers helps to calm down the busy design. I love the many layers of elements. Also, I like that the dark value elements are unbalanced. Here's the grayscale version. Let's continue to the final collage for this video. These are the transparent paper options I pulled for this collage. All the transparent papers are monoprinted deli paper. The non-transparent papers are a mix of yellow, orange, cream, blue, brown, and leftover multi-layer painted scraps that I've used in other collages in this series. I pulled more papers than I will use because I didn't have a clear design plan again going into this session. I'm starting by cutting pieces from this textural green paper that will be glued directly onto the sketchbook page. This brown paper will be layered on top, so it will be glued later. I cut it now because I wanted to see how the other paper options will look under it. I decided on having yellow and orange paper options because I like the color contrast between those colors against green and brown. I'm using Golden's Fluid Matte Medium to glue these papers into place. Overlapping the different elements is a good way to add interest to the design. It's subtle but effective. I'm checking to see how each pattern paper looks under the brown transparent paper to make sure enough of it is visible. I like the geometric shape of the brown transparent paper. It was created by applying brown paint over the whole gel plate. Then I added rectangle paper pieces to create the mask. When I laid the deli paper on the gel plate, these pieces kept some areas unpainted. The pattern on the deli paper looks simple, but when cutting into the rectangles, the brown painted areas created this geometric shape. I'll add music at this point and come back to discuss the finished collage. I want to talk about the brown transparent paper again. It is the main design idea that I want to recreate again. Maybe not the exact shape, but a similar geometric shape. Also, I like this color combination. The grayscale version reinforces that the brown elements make a strong statement that adds color and value contrast. There's one more video with the final set of daily collages that needs to be edited, then uploaded. I didn't plan for this series of videos to fall this far into December, but the Thanksgiving holiday slowed down my editing time. Let me know if you have any questions. Thanks for watching. Take care.